right, everybody, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here today to listen to Mr. Keven McQueen, who is the author of a lot of murder and mayhem books that are on local areas, both Louisville and Indiana. And he's been here a couple of times before. He's a great speaker, a very interesting guy. And today he's going to be talking about this one here, the Great Louisville Tornado of 1890, which you probably didn't know about, huh? So we're glad to have you, and I'll just hand it over to you.
Can I get any murder books?
Well, I should first point out that I'm kind of having serious allergy problems today, as I do every summer, so I will try to speak as well as I can. Also, because I am very technologically incompetent, indeed, it is the stuff of legends. I wanted to do a slideshow with illustrations from the tornado book, but I didn't have any pictures ready to go on a slide, so just like in grade school, I'm going to hold up the book and point out pictures, but if you can get a copy of the book, you'll see the pictures much better. To me, the most interesting thing about the... Oh, I'm sorry.
I said, can we get a copy of the book so I can have it?
I did bring a few.
No, probably not one.
So, I think there's one right there. Yeah, here's one. Maybe it could be passed around or something. The most interesting thing about the Louisville tornado of 1890 is that nobody knows about it. Even in Louisville, very few people seem to know about it. Whenever I mention it, people always say, "Oh, you mean the 1974 tornado?" And I say, well, I don't know how many people were killed in that one. It wasn't many. I think it was 4, maybe 5, something like that. You'll have to Google it and find out. But the tornado in 1890 destroyed a huge part of the city and killed, it is said, 76 people. But through my research, I was able to prove it was much more than 76. So I'll tell you about that toward the end. The city at one time was considered tornado proof. There was a waterfront, and everybody knew in 1890 that tornadoes won't cross a large body of water, even though they do all the time. Then, of course, there are high hills around the river, especially the Indiana side, and everybody knows tornadoes won't cross high hills, though they can and do. So, I found that I should tell a little bit about how I did the research for the book. I've got this habit of going through old microfilm Courier journals, and I just sit there with a laptop, and I've been reading issue by issue and taking notes on interesting stories as I go. So if someone says, we want an Indiana book, I've already got the research done. I know the issue, the page number to go to, and I see everything unfolding just like in a novel. Then it's just a matter of printing out the articles and trying to retell it in an interesting way. So what makes this useful is you get to see all the history leading up to the tornado, and then you get to see what happened years and years afterward. So in doing my research, I found that in 1886, Louisville was considered so tornado proof there were only 5 insurance companies in the city that even had tornado insurance. And one agent said he'd only sold 32 policies ever. Then came March 27th, 1890, which was an unseasonably warm day. It was about 70 degrees. And in the evening, there came heavy rains and some hail. About 7:45, there was another heavy windstorm, one that made people run inside and duck for cover. Then there was a brief calm. Everybody came back outside, thinking the worst was over. Exactly when the tornado hit, we're not really sure. In 1890, clocks were not really as accurate and synchronized as they are now. People basically set their clocks by the sun. So you get wildly varying time estimations whenever something like a murder took place. But between 8 and 8:30 p.m. was when the tornado came. And it entered at the Parkland suburb, downtown at Garland Street. Some of these streets have probably changed their names since then. One for sure has. It was going about 40 miles an hour, and it was lit constantly by lightning flashes. One witness, in fact, said that when he first saw it, he thought that lightning was destroying all these buildings. The weird thing, usually tornadoes are shaped like a wedge, the really bad ones, or maybe they're funnel-like or rope-like. The earliest witnesses said it was shaped like a turnip. So I imagine a tornado that's really big on top and kind of small at the bottom. Some said it was like a balloon. It started out as a very small tornado and did only minor damage when it entered the town over at Parkland. But it seemed to get bigger with every street that it crossed. And you'll get to see me pulling slips of paper out, marking the illustrations, because that's about as high-tech as I can be. Here is a map showing the path of the tornado as it came through the city, and you can see it covered about 5 blocks or so. So it was pretty wide. You'll notice too here that it gets into the river. And one thing the map was too small to show, and this shows how powerful it was, it came through Louisville, and it crossed the river, went to Indiana, and then it turned around and came back to Louisville. Usually they don't do that. They cross tornadoes, just follow a straight path, maybe with slight variations, and then they dissipate, but this one returned. After technical difficulties. It was inevitable. After entering the city of Garland, it actually bounced over a few city blocks, and then it landed at 18th and Maple. I noticed that where we are now isn't that far from where it hit. In fact, it might have been here. I'm not really too sure. Maybe you'll know. It crossed, in order, Broadway, Magazine, Chestnut, Madison, Walnut, Grayson, Jefferson, Market, and Main. And of course, it did damage to all the small streets that intersect the large streets. The first victims were killed at 18th and Maple. It hit a grocery store run by a man named Emmerich. It killed him and his daughter Emma and a customer. And then it moved on to 17th and Broadway, where it hit the Church of the Sacred Heart, which at that time was only 5 years old. And it destroyed the church, it destroyed the buildings surrounding it. All the nuns escaped except one, a woman named Sister Mary Pius, who was crushed when a wall fell over on her. Once I did a speech on the tornado and someone came and showed me her picture, which I wish I had that. Everything in the church was destroyed except for one statue of the Virgin Mary, which was missing a fingertip. I'll show you a picture of it in a bit. Most people in those days heated their houses with open fireplaces or gas pipes. So, major problem, when the tornado destroyed buildings, they often caught fire afterwards. So there were a big problem with flaming rubble here and there, in addition to the damage caused by the winds. At 16th and Magazine, a tornado hit a saloon run by John Thierman. 5 men were inside. Mr. Thierman and his brother escaped, but the other 3 were actually crushed and then burned by the fire that spread through parts of the city. Page 29 it says. Here we go. The tornado went to Walnut Street. 15 members of an African American Oddfellows Lodge were meeting at Eclipse Hall, and this is what Eclipse Hall looked like after the tornado hit. I believe it was a 4-story building. You'll notice in the picture it's a 2-story building. You'll also see large cannonball holes, shaped holes in the lower floor where it would just send debris straight through. All of the lodge members escaped. It was considered quite a miracle, actually. The members said later that when the tornado approached, that the walls and the windows actually bulged inwardly before the building blew up. And because lodge meetings are secret, they locked the door, which means they couldn't get out through the door. They were trapped in the wreckage for 10 minutes, worrying that the stove was going to catch everything on fire. And then a strong gust of wind moved enough debris that they were able to crawl out. All escaped. It was, like I say, considered quite a miracle at the time. The earliest press reports said they were all killed and burned up, so not true, fortunately. At the same time, on the 3rd floor, there was a lodge meeting for African American women called the Daughters of Samaria. And again, note that the floor where they were meeting is totally gone. Luckily, because I mentioned there was some bad weather just before the tornado, therefore the lodge was not full. Most people stayed home. And all of them also survived except a couple who were badly injured. Walnut Street was hit very hard, but there was only one death. Rather horrifying one. A man named Moody Davis was crossing the street and a big piece of a building, a big sharp part, came down and just impaled him right through. I keep thinking of that scene in The Omen. Maybe that's not quite how it went, but that's what I always imagined. On Grayson Street, the tornado destroyed St. John's Episcopal Church and the rectory, killing Reverend Stephen Barnwell and his son. All that was left was the facade, the belfry, and the pulpit. And I have a picture showing the damage done to the church. If you get a chance to see the picture up close, you'll notice somebody has painted "Danger, do not enter" on the remainder of the walls there, just like you might see today. And from Grayson Street, the tornado went to Market Street, which had the heaviest damage and the greatest loss of life. And I've got a picture showing Market Street between 10th and 11th Street. Matter of fact, that's the picture on the cover of the book. And you can see that there's a building over here, and it's just like someone took a great big knife and just cut the front part of the building down, and you can just see all these empty rooms in there. There's also a man in the picture. I've never quite understood what he's doing, but if you look in the dead center, there's a guy standing on top of a mound of rubble, like a baseball pitcher or something. I've often wondered why he's there. The most tragic event took place on the same street. Falls City Hall was at 1126 Market Street. And if I'm not mistaken, there is in fact a monument to the tornado victims at 1126 Market Street now. Someone sent me a picture, so I'm pretty sure it's real. You can never be sure.
Is that West Market?
I don't really know. It's got a
It seems like it's
1126
coming from that direction.
Market Street, but I'm not sure if that's west or east. Falls City Hall, today we would call it something like a community center. It was a place where various groups met. There were dancing classes, there were lodge meetings, just things of that nature, and unfortunately the building was full that night. There was a dancing class being held. It was estimated later about 200 people were in the building. Falls City Hall was directly hit by the tornado. And I have a very small picture of it here, and you can't really tell from that far away, but the buildings to the left and the right are more or less untouched. Just a little bit of damage, but Falls City Hall in the center was just reduced to a big pile of flaming bricks almost immediately. It's one woman who lived in one of the buildings to the left or the right, one of the mostly unharmed buildings, was killed when, in a panic, she crawled out her window. And this just makes me weak in the knees thinking about about it. She crawled out the window and had nothing really to hold on to. So she was hanging from the windowsill with her feet on the cornice of the window below.
What floor was she on?
She was on, I'm not really sure. She was, oh wait, I do too, 3rd floor.
Yeah.
She was on the 3rd floor,
That's
so.
damn scary.
Yeah, I know. I got very disturbed even thinking and writing about it. So crowds were gathering, cheering, please, hold on, help is coming. But she panicked and let go and hit the rubble, the damage below, the debris, and ended up breaking her back. And if she hadn't panicked and stayed inside, she would have been okay. Another picture of Falls City Hall, which really tells about it much better than I ever could. You can see horses in the front, and there's wagons. This was, of course, during the cleanup, and they're starting to pick everything up, and it's a little bit blurry because the photography at the time, if the light wasn't just right, it wouldn't come out quite well. But you can see various people standing around. You can see people cleaning up. You can see that there's really nothing left of the building, just piles of bricks, that's all there is. All right, from Market Street, the tornado went to Main Street, the commercial center of the city. And by this point, it was actually getting bigger and wider. When it first entered the city, at Garland, it was about 75 yards wide. By the time it hit Market and Main, it was 5 blocks wide, which was the largest it would ever become. Let's see, I've got a caption to go to page 38. Oh, here's a picture of Main Street between 8th and 9th. And it's like a bomb went off or something.
Question for you.
Yes.
What part of Garland did it start on?
I don't really know. It really began at Parkland, the suburb, and then it went to Garland. Garland was the first part of the city hit by the tornado, and then from there it just kept getting bigger and wider.
It just worked on down here.
Yeah, and then it crossed the river, went to Indiana, hit New Albany and Jeffersonville, and turned around and came back and hit Louisville's water supply. So that's a powerful storm. How powerful was it? I'll tell you in a little bit what modern meteorologists say about it. They tell by judging from the pictures. Market between 8th and 9th. 13 warehouses in the tobacco district on Main Street were destroyed. I remember reading that some merchants had a pretty good sense of humor. After the tornado hit, they hung out little signs saying business moved to new location. You've got to admire it. In the foreground, you can see horses hauling lumber. So obviously these are going to start rebuilding houses and stores. It's also interesting, you can see telegraph wires in the background, telegraph lines, which either they weren't damaged or they were put back up very quickly. I think they were put back up very quickly. One thing I forgot to mention is that today, of course, we get instant warnings whenever a storm is coming. They didn't have that back then, but it wasn't as primitive as you might think. They actually had a weather service back then. It was called the Signal Service. And they were set up all over the U.S. with telegraph systems. And telegraphs were maybe not as fast as email, but they were pretty fast. They were within seconds. And so the storm that actually hit Louisville began in Kansas. And the Signal Service out there were sending telegrams all over the east saying, watch out, big storm coming. But by the time I mentioned earlier, there were severe windstorms before the tornado hit, and those destroyed the telegraph lines. Therefore, all the later warnings didn't get through. And it had another interesting effect I'll get into shortly. I forgot to mention that and I should have. The greatest loss of life on Main Street took place at Virgil Wright's Saloon and Cigar Store, which was right next door to the Louisville Hotel. And it took a chunk of the corner and just dropped it, a chunk of the hotel corner, and dropped it onto the cigar store, which here is a picture showing that. The hotel is by and large undamaged except for the one corner that fell, but then you can see what it did to the building just below it. There was an apartment on the upper portion of the store where chambermaids lived who worked at the Louisville Hotel. And 5 of them were killed, as were 5 customers in the cigar store. Virgil Wright, the owner of the store, was found in the basement covered with debris, trying to shoot himself, but he was so badly injured he couldn't pull the trigger. After Main Street, the tornado went to the waterfront, which was where the Union Depot was located, the pride of the city at the time. It was where thousands of people came and went every day. It was probably the only location in the city where almost everybody was familiar with, because to go somewhere they'd have to leave on the trains there, or if they were picking up friends or family members, they would go there to get them. By this point, the tornado had gotten big enough and made enough noise that people knew it was coming when it hit Union Depot, so they were trying to take cover before it got there. It was really quite at the height of its power by then. It actually took this big building and lifted it up into the air, moved it about 3 feet, and dropped it. Pictures. But fortunately, for the people, it's an extra one. Oh, here's the Union Depot. Look what it did to that train. The people were actually saved by the trains and the huge roof that the building had. Page 56. The trains actually supported, oh no, I lost one. The trains actually supported the roof when it fell, so everybody was under that, and only one person was killed, a boy who ran a newsstand. Then I've got just various pictures showing locations from around the city. All these came from Ekstrom Library's special collections at the University of Louisville. And this picture depicts, there we go, it depicts, well, nobody knows where the picture was taken, but it was taken in Louisville. You can see that this building has been almost completely de-roofed. I remember one building, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a planter's warehouse. Parts of the building just plain old disappeared, and no one ever found them. And it's been theorized they were dropped in the river, and they're down there right to this very day. Page 55. This is, oh no, that's Union Depot. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find Market Street. Well, anyway, here's 9th and Main, looking west.
What page is that?
That's on 59.
Okay, there it is.
See something back there that looks like a, I don't know what that is. It looks like a very tall monument of some sort. It may be the only thing in the picture that's not damaged. Again, you can
I
see.
think it's a smokestack.
Oh, a smokestack. That would make sense. Of course, cities in those days weren't quite as tall as they are now, so something like a smokestack would really stand out. See, the Market Street, the hardest hit area, right here on page 60. And 61 shows 10th and Main looking east. Now wait a second. Okay, that's not the picture on the cover. Very similar though. You can see where the tornado just basically cut the front of a building off, just like it was a piece of cake or something. Look how high the debris is. In some places, it was as high as 30 feet, right in the middle of the street. The picture here on the right, I can see a telegraph line that's been tilted over and it's leaning against this building right here. If I ever do this again, I'll try to have slides made, I promise.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
As far as the storm starting from around out in Kansas, did those tornadoes miss Evansville and just pick up right in this area? Was they bouncing all the way across?
I'm not sure what it did in Evansville. It did hit New Albany,
Okay.
but it didn't kill anybody. By the time it got to Indiana, I just guess everybody saw it. There was no mistaking it. It was as big as it would get. So it did a lot of damage to houses, and it took off a lot of rooftops.
Okay.
And New Albany and Evansville?
Evansville's way west.
Yeah, not
It's
Evansville.
west, but I know a lot of them storms.
Well, it was actually a storm system. Remember how in '74 there was something like, 30 or 40 tornadoes? Not the same one, but just different ones all over the state, and then more in other states. It was like that also in 1890. And near the end of the book, I've got a list of other states and other cities that were hit by their own tornadoes. Evansville might have been one of them. If I can find that, I'll look for it. But I do know that the southern tip of Indiana got hit by the same tornado. Oh, I'm coming to that part. After destroying Union Depot, it crossed the Ohio River, where it sank a few tugboats. All the ships, of course, were moored with ropes, but the tornado snapped the ropes, and a lot of ships were being sent toward the falls. And luckily for them, he might have been the only person in the whole city who took the tornado warning seriously, which he got earlier in the day. It was a riverboat captain, and he made sure that he had his boilers full of, had everything full of coal and full steam ready to go just in case he was needed. And he certainly was, because his ship had to go through picking up all these poor sailors off their wrecked ships. Saved a lot of lives that day, just by being prepared. Went to Jeffersonville, did damage to buildings, but didn't kill anybody. Then it came back and it hit Louisville's water supply. Let me see. The Waterworks was a very strange looking building. Let me see if I can find it. It looked more like a Grecian temple. Oh, here it is. It had columns and everything. Here it is before and after the tornado hit it. This is on 63. And there was a great deal of suspense for several days because this was the city's major water supply. And they were sending out warnings to people saying, we use like 12 million gallons a day, but we've only got enough for 3 million a day. So make sure you don't use water for anything except cooking and putting out fires. But of course, a lot of people used it for other purposes. Everybody assumes everybody else is going to follow the rules, so I don't have to. So there was a lot of danger for water shortage for about a week until they got it repaired. After it destroyed the waterworks, it went over to Carroll County, and that was where it finally roped out and disappeared and did no more damage. So very terrifying. It could have been worse though. Almost everything could be worse. The time of the evening it hit between 8 and 8:30. If it had struck the same area earlier, there would have been shoppers on the streets, there would have been children in school. That was near the theater district, so there would have been people out getting entertainment at the time that it happened.
Excuse me, did it disrupt the water supply?
Oh, it did.
Okay, that was a biggie.
Yeah, for about a week, everyone was very worried that they wouldn't get enough water.
Oh, so that tap water, you couldn't get it?
No. I guess people with wells, and a lot of people did have wells in those days, even in the city. I guess
They
people
were
with wells were
incredibly
good.
dangerous.
But anybody using the city water supply was in trouble. Fortunately, the pipe was okay. They had to fix the big Grecian type column that went around the pipe, but the pipe was all right.
Yeah, the custom in Louisville in the early 19th century was to just dig your own well on your property. And they would have a privy on the same property.
Oh, yeah.
So what could go wrong?
Oh, nothing but cholera. There were
A few other things.
Yeah,
too.
there's another topic, cholera outbreaks. It just wiped out entire cities almost. And it took them a long time to realize where it was coming from. It was from fecal germs, from animal poop on the vegetables and human poop in the drinking water. And yeah, we're lucky we didn't live then. I've often thought.
They live very long.
No, if you could survive cholera, you could survive anything. Evidently. It also caused something else. I'm trying to think what it was. Typhoid, that's why.
A lot of dysentery.
Dysentery. Yeah, it wasn't good. So some people had wells, so I'd say a lot of people did. Louisville was pretty agrarian in its early history. It didn't become a major city till later, so I'm always surprised again going through the old newspapers, reading about how much farmland there used to be right in the city. So there were people with their outhouses and their, well, even in the more fancy built-up places, there were outhouses.
Yeah, there were people in the 40 or 50 years ago, there was a lot of people who would dig out the old things for artifacts.
Yeah.
They got a lot of bottles and stuff like that, antique bottles.
We find a lot of murder weapons
Oh, that sounds good.
in privies. So why is this? Well, if you killed someone and you want to get rid of the gun or the knife, you throw it down the privy. Who's gonna
They
look
also
there
throw
for it?
the corpus delectable.
Well, not only that, speaking of corpus, I found accounts of people finding murdered dead bodies down
That's
in
what I mean.
outhouses.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's the section of my next book I'm working on, is dead bodies found in outhouse vaults. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Did you follow any of the bottle diggers around the turn of the century, the end of the 20th century, in the 70s especially, they dug up all the old privies and stuff for the antiques. So most of them have actually been dug.
Right, well, they'd find bottles, they'd find
Lowest
coins.
I ever got was 19 feet, I was only in on a few of them. So,
Well,
all I got was
there's
3
a whole,
bottles. The
section
three of us
of-
each got 1 bottle.
there's a whole section of archaeology called garbology, where they specialize in garbage dumps and places like that, because you can tell a lot about a civilization from their garbage.
You could cross-reference a lot of the bottles with the city records and
Right.
the advertisements in the Courier Journal and stuff like that.
Because usually in those days, bottle manufacturers would stamp their name on it.
Yeah,
So you know exactly who made that bottle.
yeah, I've got a few of those, but not very many.
And bottles that are like
I
blue
got on it
bottles or
late-
green
got on it
bottles,
late in the game.
pretty valuable.
A friend of mine, who's dead, passed just a few years ago, but he got thousands of bottles. He went down, but I really think it shortened his life, because I don't think digging old privies is a really helpful
Well,
hobby.
it's kind of a side story, I guess, but I'm working on a book now that's just Ohio stories. And there's one story in there about a guy who was digging a privy vault, but he didn't know there was another old privy vault unmarked, and he, like, with his shovel hit the vault, and this flood of poop came through the hole and he suffocated. Yeah, I like uplifting topics like that. Things that cheer and instruct and educate.
Yeah. Lowest I ever got was 19 feet.
That would be a big privy vault.
No, it was
But
a,
the deeper
it was
the
small
better.
diameter, it was only 3 foot diameter, it was unusually small, usually averaged around 4 feet.
Even then, people used to have to clean them out the same way they clean out septic tanks. It was
Yeah.
either that or dig a whole new one.
Yeah.
Most people probably just dug a whole new one, rather than clean one out that was already used.
I don't know how that worked, because it sounds terrifically inconvenient.
Oh, I think so.
In the horse and buggy era,
I know,
I guess they'd have to. put-
I'll be dreaming about it tonight.
You know,
Oh, yes.
I don't know how much it was used as agricultural fertilizer.
Hopefully not much, cause it was the human stuff that really caused cholera.
Disease, yeah. Spread
And
disease.
animal poop is no good for you, but it was the human poop that really did it.
Yeah, he was liable to give a horse disease, could you
Yeah.
imagine? Those
Right.
are about people diseases.
Oh, sorry to think of it.
It's all good. For the most of your research, where did you dig it up from?
So to speak, from the Courier Journal.
Okay.
I just go through old issues. I started with 1877 and made my way to 1939, and then, Matt's very bad at math. It's almost 60 years worth of papers, I think. And then one day I said, I need new material, so I started with 1830 and worked my way up to 1876. So I've looked at something well over 100 years, about 100 years worth of newspapers.
When did that paper first start, if you don't mind me?
Courier Journal? Well, it actually started in 1868. First there were two papers, the Courier and the Journal.
Okay.
And let's see, the Journal started about 1830, and I'm not positive when the Courier started. Probably about 1840. They were big rivals for a long time, and then they joined forces and became the Courier Journal.
Do they keep all their records mostly on microfilm, or you can get it on a computer?
You can get it on newspapers.com,
Okay.
which, because of my technological idiocy, I avoided newspapers.com for a long time, but now I'm totally sold on it. It's very convenient. But I'm so old-fashioned, I did all that work on microfilm, and usually when you're talking to kids, they don't even know what microfilm is. Most people don't. It was newspapers on film, just like movie film, and you'd pile it into a machine, and you'd crank the handle, and it would come up in a big lit page, and you'd just scroll through it page by page.
Do they still got it right here anywhere we can look up old microfilm?
Some places have it. It's being phased out.
I know, that's why I was
Yeah,
asking.
mostly they're using online papers. Frankly, I'm sorry to see the microfilm go, because I really liked it. And I kept finding all these great stories I wasn't even looking for, because I would just go from paper to paper and I'd say, oh, look at this, that's kind of interesting, I'll make a note of it, maybe I'll write about that someday. So I've got more information than I will ever actually use, but whenever I do need it, I have it. So it's very helpful. I like microfilm. I hate to see it go. I hope it never goes away completely. What I wanted to tell you about the rescue efforts afterwards, which began immediately. As soon as the tornado left, citizens were out on the streets trying to help people out of burning buildings and broken up places. Various houses were used as makeshift morgues. If you had a house that was still standing and they needed somewhere to take bodies, they'd take the bodies right to your house. So that's also kind of sad to think about. Falls City Hall, the worst disaster section of the city, at least 54 people died there. And a lot of them didn't really seem to be badly injured when their bodies were found, and it was thought that a lot of them suffocated. They were just piled over with bricks and garbage, and just some of them even might have died from breathing gas from broken gas pipes. Excuse me, gas pipes. Others were burned, some actually alive, because no one could get to them in time. Louisville was cut off from the rest of the world for a few days because they had no telegraph lines and they couldn't contact other cities. The only reason people found out about it was somebody got in a boat and rowed his way over to Indiana, which wasn't so badly hit, and sent out the message through the wire services there. Even in Louisville, most people didn't know a tornado had come through because it just hit that one narrow section downtown, and people living in other sections didn't even know about it till the next day, which seems almost incredible.
How did it do a lot of damage at shipping port?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. That's near the docks, isn't it?
It's near the canal.
I know it did some pretty heavy damage.
Canal goes through shipping port.
It might have. I don't remember seeing any references to it in the papers. If it had been really, really damaged, I'm sure they would have been saying something about
I think
it.
it was probably low enough not to be
Maybe so.
seriously damaged.
Could be. I'm not really sure.
Was there a lot of rain associated with it? Was a lot of flooding that showed?
There was a lot of rain right before the tornado. In fact, there's a section called the Point. Does that still exist? Is there still a point in Louisville?
With the Rancote House?
Maybe.
Okay.
It's just a neighborhood they called the Point.
Oh, yeah.
And it had a dam that was very weak. And there had been so much rain before the tornado, people were worried that the dam might break. And then Louisville would have had a tornado, a fire, and a flood all at the same time. But luckily the dam held. So it did rain. It rained a lot right before it.
Locks.
And I'm sure it rained afterwards too. It got a lot colder after it passed. I think it went from 70 degrees before to about 40. And I believe it did. It snowed the next day. Just to show you, the weird variations weather can have.
I wonder if shipping port was damaged by the tornado.
I don't know. I'd like to know. I don't think it must have gotten a lot.
It was a pretty thriving town. And,
Yeah.
Till the Corps of Engineers chased everybody off of it.
Yeah.
Actually, it was long earlier before that it was a. I mean, they had streets. Shippingport had streets and stuff on it. It had like 500 and between 500 and 1,000 residents at one time.
Yeah.
And now they won't let anybody look at it.
Wow. I'm most familiar
That's
with
the Corps
it
of
because
Engineers.
yeah, Jim Porter the Giant came from there.
Yeah.
That's where I'm most familiar with Shippingport.
He lived in Shippingport.
Yeah, he did. He had a tavern there, all 7 feet 11, I think, inches of the kind. He had a Shippingport tavern, and he died there too. So that's always been a really
I've
interesting
done on
person.
Shippingport before the Corps of Engineers chased everybody off of it about 40 years ago.
I'm assuming it wasn't too badly hurt, because there would have been a lot more in the papers about it. I'm fishing around to
I thought
find
it was a refuge after the tornado.
my favorite. It might have been.
More of a refuge than a damage spot.
Well, that was one of the nice things, is that people actually did open their houses to the homeless at the time, and there were a lot of homeless. Oh, I wanted to show you this one. I really like this one. It's on page 70, and it's the corner of 11th and Market. You really need a bigger picture to see what's going on here, but you can see this badly damaged building, and there's all these. It's just a few pieces of lumber are holding it up, but up here on the upper left, there's a guy who's apparently working on the roof, and under where all these lumbers are, this building looks like a house fly could land on it and break it. There's all these guys standing under it. And off here to the right, there's a couple women passing by, and one of them seems to be saying, "What are you idiots doing under there? Come out from under there."
Well, one of the things about that situation is there's no way to do anything, especially then, there's no way to do anything about fixing the damage without getting yourself severely imperiled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true.
It's
There was
dangerous work. It was very dangerous work then.
and nothing mechanical.
No.
No dump trucks, no steam
It's all
shovels. Everything was done by hand.
Round up a bunch of people that.
Shovels,
Yeah.
saws, wagons, that's
There's
all they
a lot of
had.
competition and everything like that.
Well, what the city did was they hired extra workers, and I can't remember off the top of my head how many. It was something like, I think, 100, and they had 50 guys working all day and 50 guys working all night. And they ended up cleaning up the city pretty fast. I think I have something coming up about it. Oh, you sightseers. You've always got sightseers. Rubberneckers. So I've got a couple pictures where you can see clearly people are just standing around looking at everything. Photography, photography, by the way, had been around for a long time, but 1890 was the era of the amateur photographer. This was around the time the Kodak was invented. So anybody could go out on the street with their camera and take pictures. So these were mostly done by a professional photographer named Clobber. But there were probably, who knows, just all sorts of people took pictures of it. A lot of old family albums are made and still be unpublished photos from the Louisville tornado. There are several pictures where you can see people. Here's a whole line of people. Looks like women dressed in black going up the street.
So this tore up the waterworks,
Oh, it did.
the water tower and everything.
Yeah.
So it took down the water tower. It was just showing a picture of the first and maybe second floor.
Yeah, it took about a week to get it fixed. There was a severe water shortage before then. Let me see, what did it cost? It cost about $20,000 for the relief of storm victims. Private citizens contributed another $20,000, and I meant to do the math on that and see how much that would be today, but I forgot to do it.
And it looks.
It would be quite a lot.
Any which way, I think it was a lot worse than,
Oh, yeah.
a huge amount of it was not accounted for, the damage,
And remember, very few people were insured against tornadoes because they didn't think they needed to. They probably did afterwards.
What do they do for water?
Well, again, I think a lot of people, if they were lucky, had their own wells.
Well, no, I've done research on that. Having your own well on your lot, 25 or 30 feet from a privy is
Yeah.
not a really good situation.
No, it's
especially
not.
when your surrounding neighbors.
And by
have the same bad
1890,
arrangement.
by 1890, there was enough advancement where most people had city water, which they got from that big pipe that I had the picture of, which unfortunately got broken by the tornado.
So how long did it disrupt the water supply?
Only about a week,
That's
maybe
surprising.
less.
They did a great job then.
Yes, they did. They definitely did. There were contributions from churches and fraternal organizations and theatrical benefits and citizens from around the state. Louisville took care of itself, though. It actually did almost all the financing on its own with no help from the state government, no help from the federal government. Clara Barton of the Red Cross came. I think it was about 3 days after the tornado. And she saw that matters were so well taken care of, she just left. They didn't need her. That's what a good job they did. It happened on the 27th of March. By April 1st, almost all the merchants were back in business again. Most of them were selling damaged goods. But, excuse me, by April the 2nd, almost all the streets were passable. So that was like what, 6 or 7 days, I think, something like that.
That's pretty good.
It was good enough, especially within a month. They said that strangers passing by would have had no idea that a tornado had ever taken place. I think that may be one reason why it's just not well remembered. They recovered from it so fast that nobody really had a chance to really obsess over it and fester it over in their minds, because things got cleaned up and back in business very quickly.
So how does it compare to the 1974 tornado?
I'm trying to remember. I'm familiar with the Richmond tornado of '74, because I was almost killed by it. So a lifelong obsession with tornadoes. Now, I know it killed 7 people in Richmond, but in Louisville, I'm not sure. I seem to recall it wasn't too many, 3 maybe, 4 maybe. Someone could Google it and find out, but usually when you mention it, that's the one people remember.
74.
Yeah, wasn't there another one, like around 1990 or so?
It was, I think that was in Floyd County.
It might have been, I seem to recall. And there was a very minor one, wasn't there, a couple years ago?
Probably.
Just on the outskirts, I don't think it did much damage at all. But anytime there's one near Louisville, I keep thinking, you know, tornadoes do tend to follow the same path. The path of least resistance. There's a town near London, Kentucky that's been hit at least 3 times.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, they got hit.
And right, earlier this year, it came very close to that area. In fact, in my book, I actually said something like, well, it's been hit 3 times, it could happen again. And it happened just a year or 2 after I wrote the book, and then it happened again earlier this year. So, if I lived in that area, I would build a storm shelter. Absolutely. Let's see, I mentioned earlier that, if I can find it, that the Virgin Mary's fingertip on the statue was damaged, but they repaired that in 1959. And, oh, here we go. Here's a picture of the church after the tornado and a picture of the statue.
What page is that?
That is on 82.
My cousins used to go there.
Here it is.
I'll try to do better with illustrations.
Oh, yeah, it's got the
next time.
Virgin Mary
Yeah.
statue. Peeking through between the round roof and
You can see part of the roof is down on the right there.
So you said that, they kinda can tell by the pictures and stuff how strong it was?
Yes, they can. Meteorologists looking at an old picture of storm damage can do a good estimate. And the estimate for this tornado was, and I don't know what it would be on the EF, the enhanced Fujita, but on the Fujita scale, they thought it was a F4. And F5 is as bad as they get. And a lot of witnesses said that it actually didn't really touch down, that it just sort of
Bounce.
skipped her over, the surface, and they'd said if it had actually touched the ground, the damage would have been even worse than it was. I don't know. A lot of people in later years, looking back on it, said that they would follow its path through the city, and they could actually see the damage getting worse and worse the farther into the city that it went.
So comparing the 2 tornadoes, 74 and 1890, 1890 was a lot worse.
Much, much worse. In fact, I'll tell you more in a minute about things I discovered going through all the old newspapers over the years. I wanted to show you what Baxter Square Park looked like after the tornado.
What page is that?
That is on 85. And believe it or not, it's actually been cleaned up a little. I'd read that there was a huge, huge pile of damage in there, complete with a roof just sticking out on top. And if you look over on the next page,
Those trees look naked, like if it was still winter. Yeah.
oh, right, it took off all the branches. Here's the gate. Look at I think that's pretty amazing. That's the gate to Baxter Square Park, and all of the
Oh, there it is.
standing upright iron poles are all bent like this.
Wow, that was powerful.
Yeah, you just have to imagine
Yeah.
what that would have been like. You can see a bunch of children hanging around there under it.
That's cute.
Yeah, look how they're dressed with their little caps and everything.
There's iron gates.
So the final statistics were it destroyed 5 churches, the depot, 2 public halls, 3 schools, 256 stores, 32 factories, 11 tobacco warehouses, and 532 houses. But within a year, almost everything was rebuilt, and even some of the poorer neighborhoods were rebuilt much, much better than they had been before. But for years afterwards, anytime the sky grew dark and storms were coming, people headed for their storm shelters. Well, I mentioned that the official death toll for years was 76. But as I did the research, as I also mentioned, I did research years and years after the tornado. So I would find people who died of their injuries a year later, 5 years later, 30 years later. So by the time I got done adding them to the list, it's something like 125. In fact, a couple years ago, you may remember, it was December, and Kentucky had lots of bad tornadoes. And I didn't see it myself, but somebody had said on a post online something about how the Louisville tornado had killed 76 people, and apparently Jim Cantore, the CNN weatherman, had read my book because he posted something like, no, it's more like 120. And we know this from this McQueen fellow's book, Great Louisville Tornado. Shortly after the book came out, I don't know if they did it, but the National Weather Service had said that this tornado had been ranked, I can't remember what it was, something like the 7th or 8th deadliest tornado. And they said, well, we're going to upgrade it now that we see from your book that the death toll was a lot more than people thought at the time. I don't know if they did. They said they were going to. Who knows if they did. Well, just as a final note, because it sort of, I don't know, shows you how frightened people were by this. Back in 2011, I did a talk at the Filson Club about this. And I actually had slides back then. And right before the speech, some guy said, hey, you've got to come see this house where I live. It was only a couple streets away from the Filson Club. So I went over to this guy's old 19th century house, and I thought he might be going to murder me. Because I'm always convinced people are out to kill me. But when I went to his house, he showed me the house had been built by a doctor, and he's mentioned in the book, because he was nearly killed by the tornado in 1890, so afterwards he said he was going to build a tornado-proof house. And the current owner showed me it had brick walls that were 7 feet thick, double coatings of plaster, so many supporting beams, a lot more than you would think necessary. I didn't write down the address, unfortunately. I wish I had.
Interesting house.
Yeah. You could tell that a true blue tornado folk built that house. But if you didn't know that, you'd walk in and you'd be saying, why are the windows so thick? Why all the supporting beams?
Right.
Why are the walls 7 feet thick? But now we know. Thank you for attending. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I see that I even then didn't show all my pictures. But I showed you the best ones.
How long did it take you to accumulate the information? When did you start racking up the information?
Pretty quickly. Because for years I had that habit of just going to the microfilm machines, and I do it year by year, 1884, 1885, 1886. Then in about 2009, I realized, hey, the anniversary of the Louisville tornado is coming up. Why don't I write a book about that? So then I'd already done all my research up to the 20th century, and all I had to do is type in the phrase Louisville tornado, and I am at least that technologically with it. I could type it in the search engine in my documents, and then I'd say, oh good, here's a whole bunch of articles about it. And then I just print the articles, so the research went fast. And I was able to find all these people who died years after the tornado. In fact, later I found another one, which by then it was too late to include them in the book. It was already printed. But if there's ever another edition, I'll make sure that I put them in.
Do they still keep those microfilms at the main library here?
I don't know. They might. A lot of the really big libraries do. Because, people like me just like microfilm.
I do too. Great.
Yeah.
So,
Every time I talk about it, I have to explain what it is, but I like it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
But when I was going.
Oh, any questions about anything?
Talk about microfiche.
Any questions?
I don't know why.
All right.
So,
I've gotta find
how
a
many
better way.
birds, how many birds